Porsche is not an inexpensive brand, but it is a brand that a lot of people strive to own. And that's because it offers things like luxury, performance, reliability, prestige, all in one convenient package. But that package comes at a price, and that price is why a lot of people can't afford to own one. Or can they? To find out, I want to talk to you today about this, the 2023 Porsche Macan base, or in other words, the least expensive Porsche on the market today. So we'll talk about the exterior design, take you through the interior. I'm going to take it out for a quick first impressions road test to really find out what entry-level Porsche ownership has to offer. I'll talk about the exterior design, and I've moved into the shop where it's nice and air-conditioned to be able to do that. Along the front end of the car, there's this nice long functional vent. On the sides, there's two smaller vents that are non-functional. They're actually blocked off. I have noticed on the S and the GTS, they are open, so maybe it's just not needed for this car. There's also a nice little textured diamond plastic detail piece here. That design is sprinkled throughout the exterior of the car, so I'll call it out when I see it. Hood has some very subtle lines on there. It's actually quite a large hood. It extends to the sides of the fenders as well, so that's pretty interesting. As we move along the side of the car, if you pay close attention to these cutouts, you start to understand just how big that hood is, because this whole part of the fender all continues and it's all one panel. Rest of the side profile of the car is not too extraordinary. There's not a lot of design going on. It looks very simple, and I don't mind that at all. I like that. Over design can be a bad thing. You also have the very characteristic side blades, which are a little bit harder to see on this car because it is black, but they also have that same diamond textured design that you had on the front end. And you'll also notice that there's a little continuation to the bodywork in this rear hatch spoiler. Wheels on this car, this specific car, are the standard 19-inch wheels, and they can be upgraded to different sizes, and you can get the same kind of wheels that you could expect from an S or a GTS. But for today's video, I specifically picked this car because it's about as base as it gets. Everything is really an option on a Porsche, but I wanted to keep the price as low as possible. Moving to the rear of the car, the Macan is actually still in its first generation. It's just a mid-cycle refresh of sorts. So you have this really nice, long, continuous rear taillight, and that's a simple design that they've integrated into a lot of their modern cars, which I actually really like. I think it looks very good. The bottom part of the bumper, or the diffuser, if you want to call it that, is plastic on the base model, and it continues to have that diamond texture design, and the tailpipes are square as standard. The sport tailpipes look a little bit different, but again, that is an optional extra. All of the Macans come standard with an electronic tailgate, which is very convenient, but finding the button is kind of interesting because it continues with this really nice, simple design, but it makes it hard to see where the button might be. What they've actually done is they've integrated it into the rear wiper. So there's a little button on the bottom there, and that opens it up to reveal your cargo space. It's 17.3 cubic feet of rear cargo space, and if you lay the seats down, which of course you can, that increases to 53 cubic feet. And then you have two buttons here, one just to close it and one to close it and lock it. Let's say you're grabbing something out of the boot, you're gonna leave and you wanna lock it when you leave, you just push that button and it takes care of it for you. That's pretty much it for the exterior of the car. I actually really like how it looks, and beyond that, it's gonna be pretty hard for the untrained eye to pick out a base model versus an S or a GTS. The S has red brake calipers, for example, and I think the GTS does as well, but that's not something that you're really going to be paying attention to, especially if you're not super familiar with the Porsche brand. I should also note that the GTS comes standard 1 inch lower than any other trim. But again, if you're not super into Porsches, are you really going to notice that difference? Probably not. So moving into the interior, first off, this car actually has keyless entry, which is fantastic. So if the car is locked, you've got the key in your pocket, just grab the handle and it'll unlock automatically. And straight away when you get into the car, it is a nice place to be. You might think that because this is the most entry level of Porsches, that it would be quite medieval in here, but you would be wrong. It is very luxurious, very nice in here. Everything that you touch is wrapped in leather, including on the door panels, center console. There is some plastic, it has to be said, but it doesn't feel cheap. It feels nice and sturdy. The paddle shifters are this nice aluminum, and they've got a really nice tactile feeling to them. All of the buttons feel very premium, and of course it's got voice control. That's fantastic. Now this is all part of the new direction that Porsche is taking, so there's some haptic feedback buttons to control your air conditioning directions and your heated seats. This specific car has the premium package, so it has cooled seats as well, but they're not bad actually. They work really well. I've been fiddling around with them today and they're very responsive. I haven't had any issues, and crucially, the climate control for your fan speed and your temperature are still physical buttons. So if you are driving, you don't have to take your eyes off of the road. You can just feel for that knurled surface, and you can adjust your climate as so. That is really important to me. Also, the volume and the tuning knobs are still there as well. They haven't transitioned to being haptic feedback either. All of that, good news. Also, there's really no difference in the interior of a base Macan versus any higher trim. You might have some different materials, and then of course, if you choose any optional extras, you'll have some different ways of tracking your performance. But for the most part, you've got the same large, very responsive, very nice touch screen, same center dials. Everything, again, like I said, is wrapped in leather. So with a GTS or an S, you might find some more Alcantara, you might have a bit of carbon fiber. Some nice standard features that you used to have to pay extra for. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You've also got dual zone climate control, which is great. You can be nice and cool and she can be plenty warm without there being any arguments in the car. Overall, the entire feeling of this car is really nice. You've even got active cruise control, lane departure warning. Like I mentioned earlier, you have the keyless entry. You've got memory settings for your seats. It's a fantastic car to be in. I don't feel like I'm being skimped out by not buying a more expensive trim. I still feel like I'm in a Porsche. I still feel like I'm in a very expensive and luxurious car, even though it's a base model. So it kind of seems like you get everything that you need just by going for the base. So why spend the extra money on the S or the GTS or whatever? Well, I think you really start to understand the price gap when you look at the performance. The base car comes with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Makes 261 brake horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. All of the Macans are all-wheel drive as standard now, and they only come with the 7-speed double-clutch automatic PDK system. That means that 0 to 60 on the base car is done with in just 6 seconds. If you get the Sport Chrono package, that goes down to 5.8 seconds, but again, we're trying to keep costs as low as possible for this video, so we're gonna ignore the Sport Chrono package. The base and the T trim are the only two cars in the Macan lineup that come with this 4-cylinder engine. The S and the GTS come with a much larger, much more powerful turbocharged V6, and I think that that's where a lot of the pricing is coming from. But for everyday, just normal usability, isn't the 4-cylinder gonna be enough? I don't know. To find out, let's take it out for a real quick first impressions road test. The technology that they've integrated into this car makes it feel very premium, and the nice thing about the Macan, I think more so than any other car that's in its class, is that it still feels very nimble. With a lot of SUVs, you get a lot of body roll, and even with crossovers, they don't feel all that tight. They feel very loose and jiggly. This doesn't feel like that. This still has that sports car appeal that you would expect from a Porsche, and that, I think, is its main selling point. This makes transitioning to a crossover SUV platform much more bearable if you're coming from a sports car, or if you want that sports car experience, but you need the practicality and usability, maybe ground clearance, whatever, of an SUV crossover. So that's really what makes this car fantastic. And I've driven the GTS, and that is an extremely fast car. But that is a much more expensive car as well. So if you're buying the base, just have in your mind that it's not going to be the fastest thing on the road, but it is going to be fast enough and have a good enough driving experience where you're going to be satisfied, and you're not going to feel like you're buying this just so you can have the Porsche badge, but you're not actually getting the Porsche experience. You are still getting the Porsche driving experience. It's just a little bit different because you're a little bit higher off of the ground. You've got a few more seats, but still, it's a Porsche, and that's what Porsche does. They make Porsches, which means that all of their cars have that same appeal to them. The last time I got a rental car, it was the pre-facelift Macan, and honestly, I was a little bit disappointed with how few options there were. There wasn't Apple CarPlay at all, and no active cruise control, none of that fancy stuff that you want from a luxury car. But with this, that's no longer the case. And with this new interior, it's pretty cool because before with the PDK, to put it into full manual mode where the car wouldn't shift for you, you would just push the shift knob over to the left, and then you can use the paddles. Now it's just a little M button. So you push it and it says on the side, manual shifting mode activated. So the car will no longer shift for you. You have to shift manual, and that's really nice. If you want to turn it off, you just push the button again. Driving position, excellent. Seats, very comfortable. You have several driving modes. You've got sport. You actually have an off-road mode in this car. So if I put it in sport mode, throttle response is improved. It shifts much later on in the rev range. Car feels great. It feels sporty. It feels like a very responsive sports car. It just has a bit more of the added practicality and usability that you would expect from an SUV or a crossover. So that being said, I think it's a fantastic way to get into the Porsche family. The price point, you know, I'll touch on that in a second, but it's not that bad. And just with this first impression road test, it's a fantastic car. It's actually really quite fun to drive. I'd be very interested to see what something like this would do on track. So maybe we'll go to the Porsche driving experience at some point in the future and find out. But for now, just taking it out for a quick drive, I think it's pretty good. So it looks like everything is really positive around this car, but I haven't answered the core issue with this video, and that is the price of this car. It is the least expensive Porsche, but the base price on the Macan is $60,900. And I know that when you hear that initially, you're gonna say, man, that's a lot of money for an entry-level car, but is it really? I read a study the other day that the average selling price on a brand new car in the United States for 2023 was $48,000. That's a lot of money, and that's not that far off of the base price for this car. And aside from that, pretty much everything comes standard on this car. There's nothing that you're really gonna be yearning for. If you absolutely need more power, yeah, you're gonna have to spend a little bit more and go for an S or a GTS. But for the mass majority of people, especially if you really just wanna be part of the Porsche brand, this is a fantastic option. One thing that I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about the exterior is with the colors. Because if you are trying to keep the cost as low as possible, there's only 2 colors included in that base price. You can either get black or you can get white. Pretty much any other color you actually have to pay extra for. So I thought it would be kind of interesting. I'm gonna leave a link in the description below to the car configurator for Porsche, and that's gonna give you all of the different color options that you have for the Macan. So I'm gonna pin that comment to the top of the comment section. I want you to click on that link, go through, pick your favorite color, and leave a comment below what your favorite color Macan is, or what color would you order if you were gonna get one. Otherwise, leave me a comment with just your general thoughts on the Macan, or use it as a platform to tell your Macan stories. I wanna say a huge thank you to Porsche of Ontario. For those of you that have been keeping up with my channel, you'll notice I do a lot of videos with them. They're always super gracious in loaning me cars so that I could do reviews for you guys. So check out the links in the description below to their website and social media. If you're in the market for a Porsche, definitely check them out. Other than that, thank you again for watching. Leave me a like, subscribe to show your support for the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever I post. I try to post at least once a week, but until the next video, take care.